In the ballroom, her ex pointed at her while she stood beside by the quiet man no one dared ignore. He thought shame would make her shrink. But what had he missed about the woman he mocked? Left foot first, then wait for the music to catch up with you. Harper Vance said it softly, but every person in the room heard her. In the small dance studio on the quiet side of Nashville, the morning class moved at the speed of trust. No one rushed, no one counted too loudly. Shoes whispered against the worn wooden floor while an old country ballad played from a speaker on the window ledge. Outside, early fall pressed a pale gold light against the glass. But inside the room, all that mattered was the next careful step. Ruthie Boone stood near the center of the floor, one hand resting in Harper's, the other hovering in the air as if she were afraid the music might disappear if she reached too far. "That's it," Harper said. "One step. Then breathe." Ruthie looked down at her feet. "I used to dance faster than this, I know," Harper said. "You don't know. You're too young." A few of the others laughed gently, and Ruthie's mouth softened, almost into a smile. Harper did not argue. She had learned that some memories did not like being corrected. They liked being invited. Across the room, Marjorie Fields sat in a folding chair with her purse in her lap, and a paper dance card balanced on one knee. She had drawn tiny lines beside 3 names, though everyone knew she only meant to dance once. Maybe twice, if her knees felt charitable. "Harper, honey," Marjorie called. "If Ruthie gets all the applause at this gala, I'm telling folks you played favorites." Ruthie's cheeks colored. "I am not getting applause. You will if you stop looking at your shoes like they owe you money." The room chuckled again. Harper let the laughter settle before guiding Ruthie through another slow turn. That was the sound she listened for most in class. Not perfect rhythm, not clean posture, laughter. The first time many of her students came to her, they arrived with shoulders tight and eyes fixed on the floor. Some had lost partners. Some had lost confidence after illness. Some had simply been spoken to like fragile furniture for so long that they had begun to believe it. Harper could not give them back everything. She knew that. But she could give them a room where no one was reduced to a diagnosis, a limp, a widow's silence, or a trembling hand. She could give them a song. She could give them a step. She could give them a card with their name written on it, proof that someone had saved them a place on the floor. When the song ended, Ruthie's hand tightened once around Harper's fingers before letting go. "I didn't stop," Ruthie said, almost surprised. "No," Harper said. "You didn't." Marjorie lifted her dance card like a church fan. "That's because Miss Harper here looks sweet, but she will not let a woman quit on herself." Harper smiled, though the words found a tender place. She was used to being seen as soft voice, soft body, soft edges. In the world of dance, people often mistook softness for lack of discipline. They imagined a dancer should be sharp, narrow, effortless. Harper had learned to stop explaining that strength could have curves, that grace did not belong only to the lightest person in the room. Still, some mornings, when she caught her reflection beside the long mirror, she had to remind herself not to shrink. "Before we finish," she said, reaching for the small stack of cream-colored cards on the piano bench, "I want each of you to take one home today." A few students leaned closer. "These are for the gala rehearsal," Harper continued. "Write down the person you want to imagine dancing with when we perform. It can be someone who will be there. It can be someone who can't be there. It can even be yourself." The room grew quiet in a different way. Marjorie stared at the card Harper placed in her hand. For once, she did not make a joke. Her thumb moved over the blank line where a name could be written. Ruthie held hers close to her chest. "Do we have to turn them in?" "Only if you want to," Harper said. "They're yours." That was important. The cards were not props, not decorations for a fundraiser. They were small promises. Harper had designed the program that way after watching too many older people treated as if their stories were already over. A dance card said the opposite. It said there was still one more song, one more invitation, one more chance to be seen standing upright under warm lights, not hidden in the back row while younger voices spoke for them. After class, the studio emptied slowly. Coats were gathered. Canes clicked. Someone forgot a scarf and came back laughing. Harper stayed behind, stacking chairs and smoothing the corners of the extra dance cards. Marjorie paused at the door. "You're coming with us tonight for the meeting, aren't you?" "This afternoon," Harper corrected. "Just the planning office. The gala isn't until later this week. Same difference. Fancy people, fancy folders, fancy ways to make us feel like we should be grateful for crumbs." "Marjorie, I know. I know." Marjorie tucked her purse under her arm. "Behave and smile." Harper looked at her. "I was going to say we're not crumbs." That pleased the older woman. Her eyes shone for half a second before the humor returned. "That's better." By late afternoon, Harper sat in the small office at the Memory Care Center, a paper cup of coffee cooling beside her elbow. A coordinator scrolled through schedules on a tablet while Harper reviewed the final head count. The office was warm, crowded with brochures, donation envelopes, and boxes of name tags. Through the thin wall, she could hear phones ringing and someone laughing too brightly at the front desk. "We're thrilled to have your group," the coordinator said. "The board loves the idea of community participation." Harper nodded. "They've been practicing for weeks. I'm sure it'll be very moving." The word landed gently enough, but Harper still noticed it. Moving, sweet, inspirational. People used those words when they did not expect skill. They expected trembling hands, sentimental music, maybe a few tears from the audience before the real performers came on. Harper folded her hands over the program packet. "They're not a novelty act." The coordinator looked up, startled. Harper softened her tone. "I just mean they've worked hard. I want them treated like performers, not a warm-up." After a moment, the coordinator nodded. "Of course, I'll make sure the stage manager understands." Harper thanked her, but a small uneasiness stayed. Not because the woman had meant harm. Most people didn't. That was the difficult part. The forgetting happened politely. It happened with smiles, with lowered expectations, with chairs placed at the side of a room instead of the center. That evening, back at the studio, Harper opened her laptop on the front desk. The room was quiet now. The speaker had gone silent. A few dance cards lay drying beside the sign-in sheet, their ink names turned upward like secrets waiting to be trusted. She checked the rehearsal notes first, then the costume reminders, then the transportation list for students who needed help getting to the venue. Everything was there. Everything was careful. Then a new email appeared from the gala committee. Final performance order. Harper clicked it open. Her eyes moved down the list slowly. Children's choir, a welcome speech, a local songwriter, a sponsor acknowledgement. Then, near the middle, she saw the line for her class. Silver Steps Community Dance Program. For one breath, hope rose in her chest. Then she saw the name printed directly beneath it. Nolan Pierce. Harper went still, her hand frozen on the trackpad. The old room seemed to draw in around her, the empty floor stretching between her chair and the dark mirror on the opposite wall. She had not heard that name spoken in months, and yet it did not arrive like a stranger. It arrived like a song she had tried very hard to forget. By the night of the gala, Harper had folded the dance cards 3 times and unfolded them twice. She knew it was silly. The cards were only paper, cream-colored, hand-cut, tied with thin ribbon so the older hands in her class could hold them easily. But in the dressing room behind the ballroom, with the sound of tuning guitars and polite laughter bleeding through the walls, those little cards felt like the only part of the evening that still belonged to her students. Ruthie sat near the mirror, smoothing the front of her dress with both palms. "Do I look like I'm trying too hard?" she asked. Harper crouched beside her chair. "You look like someone who came to dance." Ruthie looked at her reflection, then quickly away. "That's what I'm afraid of." Before Harper could answer, Marjorie stepped in from the hall, carrying herself with the determined dignity of a woman who refused to let age take her entrance away. "Ruthie Boone," Marjorie said, "if trying too hard was a crime, half this ballroom would be in trouble." Ruthie laughed under her breath, and Harper felt some of the tightness in her chest loosen. The ballroom beyond them was larger than Harper expected. Tall floral arrangements stood on every table. Men in dark jackets leaned close to donors. Women in polished dresses touched one another's arms and smiled with the practiced warmth of people who knew when a camera might be nearby. At the far end, the stage glowed under amber lights, and the printed program stood on a small easel near the entrance. Harper checked it once, then again, Silver Steps Community Dance Program. And beneath it, in larger lettering than most of the other names, was Nolan Pierce. She told herself it didn't matter. Nolan was a name on a page, a voice from a life she had already put down. Her students were here. That was the only thing that mattered. Then she heard his laugh. It came from near the sponsor tables, smooth and easy, the kind of laugh that made strangers turn to see who had caused it. Harper did not look at first. She kept one hand on Ruthie's shoulder and the other on the folder tucked against her side. But Marjorie saw him. "Oh," the older woman said quietly. "That's him, isn't it?" Harper gave a small nod. Nolan crossed the ballroom as if the room had been arranged for him. He wore confidence like stage lighting. Beside him was Sienna Cole, poised and beautiful, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She glanced at Harper with polite curiosity, the way someone looks at a person they have been told about but not warned to respect. "Harper," Nolan said, stopping close enough to make moving around him awkward. "I wondered if that was you," she kept her voice even. Nolan, his smile did not change, but his eyes moved over her with a familiar calculation. Not surprise, not warmth, inventory. "I didn't realize they were putting community acts this close to the main set," he said. "That's generous of them." Harper felt Ruthie shift behind her. She did not turn. "My students were invited, of course." Nolan looked past her toward the older group, gathering near the dressing room door. "It's sweet, really. People love that kind of thing at benefits. Sweet." The word struck the same place it had in the planning office. Harper held the folder tighter. Sienna's smile faltered slightly, as if she sensed the edge in Nolan's voice, but had not yet decided what to do with it. "We're all here for the center," Harper said. "That's what matters." Nolan leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to make the insults private and public at the same time. "Come on, Harper. You know how these things work. Don't come for slow steps and sentimental cards. They come for a show." Heat rose behind her eyes, but she did not give it the satisfaction of tears. "Then I hope you give them one." His mouth tightened. "Still pretending you don't care about the spotlight?" "I care about my class. That's always been your problem." His gaze flicked again, not kindly, over her body, then back to her face. "You were never built for the front of the stage, so you made a virtue out of standing behind other people." The noise of the ballroom seemed to thin around her. Harper could still hear glasses being set down, a soft burst of applause from the stage, someone calling for a microphone check. But for 1 second, she was back in every room where she had made herself smaller so someone like Nolan could feel larger. Ruthie's fingers touched her sleeve. That small touch saved her. Harper drew one breath. "Excuse me. I need to check with the stage manager." She guided Ruthie and Marjorie toward the side corridor, but Nolan was already moving in the same direction. Near the program table, a member of the gala staff stood with a clipboard, looking worried. "There's been a timing issue," the staff member said carefully. "We may need to shorten one of the mid-program pieces." Harper already knew. Nolan rested one hand on the back of a chair and smiled at the staff member, as if he were doing everyone a favor. "My set has new material tied directly to the evening's theme. The donors will respond to it. I'm sure Harper understands." Harper looked from Nolan to the clipboard. Her class's name had been marked with a pencil line, not crossed out, not yet. "But close enough. These people have practiced for weeks," she said. "Their families are seated in that room." Nolan's smile cooled. "And my team has sponsors waiting too." Marjorie made a small sound of disgust, but Harper lifted a hand before the older woman could speak. If this became a scene, Nolan would win twice. He would make her look emotional, difficult, unprofessional. He had always known how to press a bruise and then act surprised when it hurt. The staff member shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should step into the hall," they did. The hallway outside the ballroom was wide and bright, but it felt narrower with every passing second. Guests drifted near the open doors, pretending not to listen. Ruthie stood a few feet behind Harper, her dance card clutched in both hands. Nolan's voice sharpened now that they were away from the stage lights. Harper, don't embarrass yourself. This is a major room. You should be grateful they included your little class at all. The words did not land like a shout. They landed worse than that. Calm, reasonable, meant to make her sound unreasonable if she objected. Sienna looked at him then, really looked, and something uncertain passed over her face. Harper opened her mouth, but before she could speak, another voice came from the end of the hall. That's enough. The hallway quieted. Elias Boone stood near the entrance, a sponsor badge clipped to his jacket. He had the stillness of a man who did not need to raise his voice to be obeyed. Two members of his security team remained a few steps behind him, not threatening anyone, simply present. Nolan turned, irritation flashing before recognition replaced it. Mr. Boone, I didn't realize you were involved with this portion of the program. I'm involved with the evening, Elias said. And I heard her portion was being cut. The staff member straightened. Nolan forced a laugh. It's just a scheduling adjustment. Elias looked at the clipboard, then at Harper. Was that your understanding? For a moment, Harper could feel every gaze on her. Nolan's, Sienna's, Ruthie's. The guests who had stopped pretending not to watch. Her body wanted to step back. Her voice wanted to soften. But Ruthie was behind her, holding a dance card as if it were a ticket to being seen. No, Harper said. That was not my understanding. Nolan's face hardened. He pointed toward the ballroom, anger cutting through his polished charm. This is ridiculous. You're going to let a sponsor rearrange the program over a community dance number? Elias stepped closer, and Harper found herself standing beside him, not hidden behind him. The two security men moved just enough to keep Nolan from crowding her. The guests near the doors fell silent. Even the music from inside seemed suddenly distant. I'm not rearranging anything, Elias said. I'm keeping the program they promised. Nolan looked as if he might argue again, but the staff member had already erased the pencil mark beside Harper's class. Sienna lowered her eyes. Harper should have felt relief. Instead, the shame Nolan had stirred up was still sitting heavy under her ribs, tangled now with confusion. Elias had not looked at her with pity. That almost made it harder. When Nolan finally turned away, his jaw tight, Elias did not follow him. He looked toward Ruthie instead. Mom, he said gently, are you all right? Harper went still. Ruthie lifted her chin, a little embarrassed, a little proud. I'm fine, Eli. The name moved through Harper before she understood it. Elias turned back to her, and the hardness in his face eased. My mother took your class after she stopped believing she would ever dance again, he said. The first time she smiled all the way through a song, she was standing in your studio. For a moment after Elias spoke, Harper could not answer. The hallway still held the shape of the confrontation. Nolan had gone back toward the ballroom, with his smile repaired but his shoulders stiff. Sienna followed him, slower than before, glancing once over her shoulder, as if she had heard something in his voice she could not forget. Ruthie stood close to Harper, her dance card pressed between both hands, while Elias waited without pushing for a response. Harper looked at him, then at Ruthie. Your mother? Ruthie gave a small, embarrassed shrug. I didn't want anybody making a fuss. Elias's face softened. She said your class made her feel like herself again. The words should have comforted Harper. Instead, they opened a place in her chest she had spent years trying to protect. She had grown used to people dismissing her work as sweet, harmless, a nice little activity for people who had nowhere better to be. Hearing Elias speak of it as something that had given his mother back, a piece of herself left Harper unsteady. Before she could say anything, applause rose from inside the ballroom. The stage lights had shifted. A host stood at the microphone, smiling wide, announcing Nolan's new song as a tribute to memory, love, and second chances. Guests moved back toward their tables. The staff member with the clipboard gave Harper an apologetic look and hurried after them. Elias turned slightly. Your class is still on the program. For now, Harper said. He heard the caution in her voice. I'll make sure no one closes that door. Harper nodded, but her eyes were already on the ballroom. Nolan stepped onto the stage with a guitar in his hands, and the ease of a man who believed the room had forgiven him before he ever sinned. The applause was warm. Cameras lifted. Sienna stood near the front, her expression composed, though her hands were clasped too tightly. Harper moved to the side of the room, just outside the line of tables. Ruthie and Marjorie stayed near the waiting area with the other students. Elias remained a few feet behind Harper, close enough to be present, far enough not to claim the moment. Nolan leaned into the microphone. He began with a story, not a song's, yet a story. He spoke of an old woman who had forgotten how to dance until someone wrote her name on a little card. He spoke of a widower saving one last waltz for a wife who could no longer stand beside him. He spoke of hands that trembled, shoes that moved slowly, and a room where nobody was too old to be invited. The words moved through the ballroom like warm syrup. People smiled. A few touched napkins to their eyes. Harper stopped breathing. Those were not just pretty ideas. They were pieces of her class. The old woman with the card was Ruthie. The last waltz belonged to Marjorie. The trembling hands, the saved names, the quiet rule that everyone deserved to be asked onto the floor. Those lived in Harper's lesson notes, in the journal she kept after each class, in the small cards her students had trusted her with. Then Nolan began to sing. His voice was beautiful. That was the worst part. It always had been. He could make selfishness sound like devotion if the lights were soft enough. The first verse carried the rhythm of an exercise. Harper had written for nervous students. Step, pause, breathe, return. The spoken bridge used a line from the program introduction she had sent the gala committee weeks earlier. By the time he reached the chorus, Harper's fingers had gone cold around the folder in her arms. Marjorie came up beside her, slower than usual. "Harper," she whispered. "That's us." Ruthie stood behind Marjorie, her face pale. "That card," she said. "He's singing about my card." Across the room, Sienna looked from Nolan to Harper. She had not understood everything, not yet. But she understood enough to stop smiling. Harper's first instinct was to leave. It rose fast and familiar. Get the students out. Avoid the scene. Do not let Nolan turn her pain into proof that she was unstable. Do not ruin the gala. Do not make the older people stand in the middle of an ugly thing. Her hand went to the folder. Inside were the copies she had made months before, after another small piece of her work had been borrowed without credit. Program drafts, email confirmations, dated notes, the registration papers for her lesson structure, and spoken introduction. Tucked behind them were copies of several dance cards, including Ruthie's first one, and Marjorie's careful handwritten note. She had kept them because she had learned, quietly and painfully, that kindness needed records when powerful people wanted to call it inspiration. Elias stepped closer, his voice low. "Is it yours?" Harper did not look at him. She watched Nolan sing her students' lives back to the room, as if he had discovered them himself. "It's theirs," she said. That answer steadied her. When Nolan finished, the applause was immediate. He bowed his head with practiced humility. The host moved toward the microphone again, smiling through tears, ready to sweep the evening forward. Harper crossed to the side table where the stage manager stood with the schedule. "I need our slot restored exactly as promised," she said. The woman glanced toward the stage. "This may not be the best time, it is the only time." Her own voice surprised her. It did not shake. Elias came to stand beside her, but he did not speak over her. He simply placed his sponsor badge on the table where the staff could see it and waited. Harper opened the folder. My class was invited to perform. Their cards, their stories, and my program materials were used tonight without permission. I have the dated copies. I have the emails. I have the registration documents. But I am not asking you to stop the gala. The stage manager stared at the papers, then at Harper. "What are you asking for?" Harper looked back at Ruthie, Marjorie, and the others gathered in the waiting area. The fear was still there, but it no longer had the first word. "I'm asking you to open the floor." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Marjorie lifted her chin and stepped forward. Ruthie followed, still holding her dance card. One by one, the older students rose behind Harper. Quiet as a promise the room had not yet heard. The waiting area had gone quiet in a way Harper had never heard before. No one asked what would happen next. No one whispered about leaving. Ruthie stood with her dance card held close to her chest. Marjorie beside her, with one hand resting lightly on Ruthie's arm, and the others gathered behind them in a line that looked fragile only from a distance. Harper turned toward the ballroom. The applause for Nolan had faded, but his smile was still on his face when he looked toward the side of the room. He believed, even then, that the night still belonged to him. The lights were warm, the donors were seated, and the stage had just given him exactly what he wanted. A room full of people moved by a story he had no right to tell. The stage manager glanced at the open folder on the table. "Are you sure?" Harper looked at the papers inside. Her lesson drafts, the original program introduction, the emails confirming what she had sent to the gala committee, the scanned dance cards, each one marked by a hand that had trusted her. "I'm sure," she said. Elias stood near the stage entrance, his sponsor badge catching the light. He did not reach for the folder. He did not step in front of her. He simply held his place, making certain no one quietly closed the door before Harper and her class could walk through it. The stage manager nodded once and spoke into her headset. A few moments later, the ballroom lights softened. The host, still standing near the microphone, paused in confusion as the large screen behind the stage changed. The gala logo disappeared. In its place appeared a simple title: Silver Steps Community Dance Program. Under it was Harper's name, followed by the date of her original program draft, and the confirmation email from the committee. A murmur moved across the room. Nolan's smile stiffened. "What is this?" he asked, still trying to sound amused. Harper did not answer him. She walked to the edge of the dance floor and turned to her students. "Only the first step," she said softly. Ruthie nodded. Her lips trembled, but her eyes stayed clear. Marjorie gave a small breath that was almost a laugh, the kind she used when she was trying not to cry. The music began, not Nolan's song, not his polished, borrowed tribute. It was the gentle instrumental Harper had chosen for her class weeks before, slow enough for uncertain feet, steady enough for courage. Ruthie stepped first, then Marjorie, then the others. They did not dance like performers chasing applause. They danced like people reclaiming a room that had almost forgotten them. One man paused before a turn and smiled when his partner waited. A woman touched her fingers to a dance card, tucked against her palm, before lifting her hand. Ruthie moved carefully, but she did not look at the floor. Marjorie's chin stayed high, her eyes bright as if the person she had written about on her card were standing just beyond the lights. Behind them, the screen changed again. A scanned dance card appeared. Ruthie's name at the top, her own handwriting beneath it. Then another card, Marjorie's then. A page from Harper's lesson notes, dated before the gala program, with the same language Nolan had wrapped in his song. Then the email Harper had sent to the committee, describing the cards, the slow steps, the invitation to be seen. No one shouted. No one had to. The truth entered the room quietly, and that made it heavier. Sienna stood near the front table, her face no longer arranged for cameras or donors. She looked from the screen to Nolan, then to the older dancers on the floor. The change in her expression was small but final. It was the moment she understood that what Nolan had called kindness was something he had taken from people who trusted Harper with their memories. Nolan stepped down from the stage. "This is being twisted." Sienna did not answer him. He turned toward the sponsors instead, searching for rescue in the same room he had tried to control. But the donors were not looking at him with admiration now. They were watching Ruthie take another slow step. They were watching Marjorie hold herself together with a brave smile. They were watching Harper stand at the edge of the dance floor, not as a woman causing trouble, but as the one person in the room who had protected the dignity everyone else had nearly allowed to be used. When the final note faded, silence held for one full breath. Then the applause came. It was not loud at first. It began at one table, then another, until the whole ballroom rose around the dancers. Ruthie pressed one hand over her mouth. Marjorie blinked hard and took Harper's hand when she reached the edge of the floor. Elias moved toward Nolan only after the applause had settled. "My venues won't be moving forward with your appearances," he said. Nolan stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I am." A sponsor at the front table closed his folder. Another leaned toward the gala chair. and spoke in a low voice. The decision did not need a public announcement. Nolan's image had been built on borrowed tenderness, and everyone in that room had just seen the foundation crack. Sienna removed her engagement ring slowly enough for Nolan to understand every second of it. She placed it in his hand without anger. "I can't stand beside this," she said. For once, Nolan had no beautiful answer. In the weeks that followed, his name disappeared from posters. The tour he had wanted moved on without him. The polite invitations stopped first, then the public praise, then the people who had once rushed to shake his hand. He had not lost everything in one dramatic moment. He lost it piece by piece, each loss carrying the same quiet truth. People remembered what he had done. Harper did not chase the news. She had a studio to open. It was small, on a quiet street at the edge of town, with a front window that caught the morning light and a floor that still needed one corner repaired. The first day, Ruthie arrived early. Marjorie came with a box of cookies and complained that the chairs were too hard. The other students followed, one by one, no longer guests at someone else's event, but the founding class of a place built for them. Elias came last, carrying a wrapped frame. He handed it to Harper without a speech. That was one of the things she had come to trust about him. He knew how to stand near without taking over. Inside the frame was Ruthie's first dance card. Harper looked at the cream paper, the careful handwriting, the small proof that a person could be invited back into her own life. "Where do you want it?" Elias asked. Harper walked to the front wall, beside the mirror where every student would see it before stepping onto the floor. "Here," she said. When the first song began, Harper stood beneath that framed card and watched Ruthie take Marjorie's hand. The room filled with slow steps, soft laughter, and morning light. This time, Harper did not feel hidden at the edge of the floor. She was exactly where she belonged.